You are listening to the Women's Gut Health Podcast. I'm Molly, integrative functional dietitian, ex-chef, and gut health expert. If you're struggling with constipation, diarrhea, or bloating, I know exactly how you feel because I've had Crohn's disease for almost 30 years. Each week, we'll dive into symptoms, trends, recipes, and navigate the complex landscape of women's health together, all based on scientific evidence, but in a way that makes sense. Ready to understand your body? Good. Let's go. Hi there, how are you?
Hello, I'm so good, Molly. How are you today?
I am excellent, thank you.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's talk about the best thing we ate. What about you?
I've really been trying hard to focus on protein and
Hmm.
I can do dairy pretty well, so I've been leaning on a nice bowl of savory kind of cottage cheese. And then I've
Mm.
also, well, so I'm putting, Himalayan pink salt and pepper and, some avocado, some tomatoes, maybe a little bit of fresh green or some herbs if I have them laying around on the top. And that is so incredibly satisfying and satiating. I can't do it all the time, just because my immunoglobulin panel says, it's kind of middle of the road and too much dairy can be a little congestive for my digestive tract. But I've been loving that. And then also just the nice whole yogurt with, some berries and nuts and seeds and things on top of it. So I'm finding those are great ways to get, somewhere between 15 and 30 grams of protein. And I'm loving it. It's nice to
Oh,
feel
that's
that it's
awesome.
coming in. Yeah, it's hard to do. It's like a full-time job eating protein.
Yes, that's true. That is
What
true.
about you, honey? What was delicious? I felt like I saw something on your stories of oysters and something or other, and my mouth was drooling over here.
Yeah, the oysters were really good. And oh, what else do we have? Marinated beets with sumac. Those are really
Oh,
good. And then they had like little samosas, like handmade samosas at this place.
oh my
yeah.
gosh, that sounds amazing. My kids are obsessed with those Trader Joe's samosas right now,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I imagine yours were very good.
Well, so normally a samosa is made with white potatoes, and these were made with sweet potatoes.
Ooh.
I know. It was really good.
Mm. Did you dip them in anything?
It had some kind of like tahini-ish situation.
Oh, that sounds nice. I like that.
I know.
Yum.
Yeah. What about your post that you saw on the internet that you'd like to
Oh,
talk about?
my post. I really loved this post about, how I kind of geek out on energetic fields and stuff. Um, and I have just been totally into this one lately. Uh, and it really got me excited. Okay, so I loved this post. It's by a gentleman named Mads Tormer Kenyai,
Mm,
Tomor Kenyai. He has a handful of followers, 304,000. Anyway, I came across this post of his
mm.
about fascia and how is it tied to water and light. And I loved how he kind of went over whatever he put up here, went over all of the different ways in which our body can be kind of subject to the sun, how, when we kind of wake up in the morning, and one of the things I see you doing a lot is putting your face in the sun and letting your mitochondria know it's daytime, time to get all systems going.
Mm-hmm.
And I just absolutely loved that, we are a container of water and we need to be charged by the sun. And what I thought was cool is that as we are, full of water, the second slide or third slide on here talks about how the water inside of the fascia is called easy water. And a special feature of easy water, I'm just reading this here, is that it carries a negative charge, which bathes your fascia in free electrons if you're treating your fascia well, like if you're not like sitting around and so much.
Easy
Easy water.
water.
Easy, right? I know, I thought that
Huh.
was pretty fun. So someone might be like,
Mm.
okay, so are we photosynthesizing? Yeah, we kind of are. It's pretty cool that way. So if this easy water is a battery that provides our fascia with free electrons and the sun is our charger, so then he goes into like nanos and whatnot, then here we are activating, this cellular spark. which I think is so cool, which again leads to like the mitochondria getting busy and going through all of like the active things we need to do during the day. Um, and then he talked about swirling water and how that can increase the oxygen that's in there, which facilitates the creation of easy water, making it like more alive. And this is a really effective way to structure your water to make sure that you're getting your own easy water if you want. So then it's like, okay, so this is all fun. We've got, this easy water and this sunshine, and we're, acting as plants and really like getting our body all charged up in the morning. But does it work for everybody? Like, and it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. He says here, the couch potato versus the biomechanical asaya, like, or messiah, like, are they equal? No, they're not at all. Restricted fascia, like fascia that doesn't move, people that just sit around all the time aren't necessarily able to facilitate that process of like the hydration wandering around through the tissues with this like easy water. So they talk about
Hmm.
myofascial releases and, dynamic movement with like your whole body all over the place. But what I also thought was really cool is that the way that the energy kind of travels through this fascia is also very synonymous with the acupuncture meridians. And I had just never really seen anybody bring
Hmm.
those two things together. Like usually when I talk about acupuncture, in my school that we learned that we're manipulating chi, right? And I just love how people are always like, what's chi? And it's like, oh, well, it's, roughly translated as energy. It's like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? It's not tangible. And so I just thought this was a really cool way to kind of bring some tangibleness to what might be happening when we're experiencing that laying down and that parasympathetic and the movement of the water, this easy water through the fascia, and like kind of activating it. And he's kind of calling that this engaging your multi-dimensional planes of energy.
Oh, very cool.
And then he talked a little bit about putting your naked feet on the ground, and we love grounding. So yeah, I just thought that was really awesome how he brought the acupuncture and a little bit of kind of chemistry and woo-woo-ness all together.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that combination.
Yeah, it's great. What about you, my dear? What got you stoked on the internet this week?
Mine was I saw someone post that red dye,
Oh yeah.
like likening the red dye ban to listeria. So essentially, if you are like, okay, we get an outbreak of listeria and we recall these products immediately. We ban a chemical in our food and they have 2.5 more years, 2 years, right, to
Mm-hmm.
get it out by 2027.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, why aren't we pulling all of these products out off the shelves? And so my response to that is that there is red dye in so much. I mean, entire brands of cold medicine wouldn't be able to sell. They'd have to pull
Yeah.
everything off the
Yeah.
shelf.
Exactly.
Dulcolax, which is an oral pill, is filled with a solution that has red dye in it for some
Yes.
reason. We've got all the candies, we've got the cereals, we've got but a lot of medicine,
Yeah.
because for some reason in the United States, Gatorade, some reason in the United States, we think that something's not working unless it's got color to it. Um,
Yeah, that's
I
very
mean,
true.
it's really every time you're sick and you try to find cold medicine that's
Yeah,
not doesn't have dye in it, it's like almost impossible.
that's so true. Yeah, or even like Jello.
Right. I mean, all of it. So I think it would just be so staggering and shocking. And also, I mean, not in favor of companies who have been willingly poisoning us, but
Mm-hmm.
it would be it would be detrimental to any company to pull all of their inventory off the shelf and then create a new formula and
Yeah,
then get that on there. You know what I mean? So anyway.
absolutely. I was saying on one of my stories when I was kind of reposting some of this red dye stuff, I was like, man, I wish I would have invested in beets. And like, where's Dwight Schrute when you need him to like get the red dye beet technology going? Because they're going to have to figure out a
Right.
different way to make things kind of red. There has to be an alternative.
Oh yeah.
I think that's what they do in the UK. They
Absolutely.
use beet juice.
Yes, beet juice is very common, and as we know, beets juice stain
Big time.
easily. So
Yes.
stain it all the way through. Okay. So today we're talking about bloating.
Ugh. I love talking about bloating, but I hate experiencing bloating.
This is very true. Now, did you know that there are two different kind of pieces of bloating
Mm.
that we refer to both of them as bloating? One of them is actual bloat, and this is caused by gas production or carbon dioxide production in our stomach and small intestines. The other is abdominal distension, where it's not relieved by passing gas. It's not necessarily relieved unless you're chronically constipated by a bowel movement, which often common bloating can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Gas X doesn't do anything for it. It's just like your abdomen is pushed out,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not crampy or painful.
Right. Yeah. Like sometimes I feel like that abdominal distension, which, a good percentage of our population, when I was looking it up, it's like somewhere between 16 and 30% was the different, studies that have been done out there of people that experience bloating. It's a lot. And oftentimes I feel
Hmm.
like that abdominal distension might be more of a part of a symptom picture of something that's more complicated as opposed to, I ate too much um, soluble fiber along with my beans and now I'm bloated
Right.
and I have to toot. Yeah.
Or I have to toot like multiple times.
Yes. I mean, but you have to say when you're bloated and you do lay down on your left side and fart, there's like nothing that feels better because when you're bloated and it's truly gas, it's so uncomfortable. It's like the
It
worst.
really is. It really is. Yeah. And abdominal distension can also be a big sign of pelvic floor issues. So, really common post childbirth for
Mm-hmm.
women.
Mm-hmm.
Really common with people who have really tight muscles or Ehlers-Danlos, which is like a hyperextension of the connective tissue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, it can be structural,
Yeah.
could be from like a tight psoas muscle or something like that that's in the area that's kind of preventing you from properly like positioning and digesting almost, but in a different, I don't know, it's
Yeah, so if
tough
you
to
have
explain
these
the
tight
the difference in
muscles,
digestion.
yeah, yes,
Hmm.
exactly. I feel like I come across this a lot in my acupuncture practice when you can tell that people are sitting all day, maybe they're really focused on getting tight abdominal muscles, or they're working on curing their low back, their chronic low back pain. A lot of that has to do with your pelvic floor and the iliopsoas and psoas muscles. And so they might be trying to release and work those. And a lot of the times that can really stir up some of the movement of the digestive organs underneath that, again, that fascia that lines all around them has to adjust to it. So I feel like it is a kind of complicated problem when you think about it, and that you're like, okay, I have all this skin, then I have all this fascia and water, then I have all these these digestive organs underneath, but then I have all these muscles holding it together. And it's very complex. I find like older people have a little more trouble with, that complicatedness there. And that their body
Hmm.
is just a little more fixed unless they're like, these crazy super fit people. And then I think women that are menstruating tend to have a lot more of trouble with this, especially if there's, some of the hormonal stuff that comes along with it. Like it's very normal to have, some temporary bloating during the normal fluxation, like the normal flux in your hormones.
Hmm.
That's very normal. Also, like to have intermittent stuff that's maybe not so bad, but just kind of, again, kind of temporary, come with perimenopausal time. As we know, there's a lot of that, gut associated lymph tissue and the beta glucuronidase that really kind of slows down the movement there, which can contribute to bloating. And then just kind of being older in general, there where the digestive tube isn't as boisterous as maybe it would have been, and so things aren't like moving through as the way they would in that complex, muscles, fascia, skin, all of it. They just get stuck, kind of like hardening.
Well, and it's almost like you think about how muscles degrade, get weaker, get smaller as you get older. Well, your intestines are a muscle.
Oh, they certainly are. Yes, that's so true.
I guess the last kind of bloating, interesting that you bring up some processes there related to the liver, would be bloating from fluid, which is not bloating, obviously. It's called ascites.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a buildup of fluid in your abdomen. And that's where we almost like a basketball. You see it a lot in men, a little
Mm-hmm.
higher up. And that is generally from poor liver function.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Whether it's liver disease or liver injury or, non-alcoholic kind of
Fatty liver.
hepatitis situation. Yeah. They
Mm-hmm.
don't call it fatty liver anymore. They call it something else,
Oh,
or no,
interesting.
they don't call it non-alcoholic steatohepatitis anymore. They call it something else. It used to be NASH. Now it's MASH.
Oh, okay. There you go. It's a great TV show back in the day.
Potatoes. Metabolic dysfunction associated steatohepatitis.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Liver's big for the
It
metabolic
does, right?
processes. That's actually a lot more accurate. That makes sense.
It really is. It really is. Whereas I think they used to just determine, like, is this like on the way to cirrhosis from drinking, or is this just
Mm-hmm.
more of an idiopathic or genetic liver disease?
Right.
Idiopathic means like we don't know the cause.
Right. And those people are like the big, kind of that the man that you see with he looks like he swallowed a basketball and it's really tight and
Yes,
full and you're like
right.
there is so much
Fluid.
fluid. Yeah, and also, the kind of the next level of fluid where things are a little more congealing. Like you can kind of
Mm.
imagine that his fascia has become a little more fixed, right? Like it's not as flexible because there's just not a lot of movement happening there. Everything is really full and congested, so it's hard.
Hmm. Now, some other things that cause bloating. When we talk about gas production, well, like what causes gas production? I think the most important thing to remember is that gas is when a literal gas forms inside of your body. So it could be that you are not having enough enzymes to digest fat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big part of it. You could even be simply dehydrated,
Right.
or maybe like a diet that's really low in that prebiotics or the soluble fiber, which really helps, feed that microbiome of the gut, which is going to move things through a lot better.
And especially when we have, so fibers ferment with probiotic bacteria in the colon. They feed the
Mm-hmm.
probiotic bacteria. And when we have bacteria, even if they are like of similar strains that would be in our colon, but they're in our small intestine, they're too high up. The food is still in bigger pieces. It's not fully digested like it is when it gets to the colon. So a lot more hydrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide gases are produced.
Yeah.
And you'll know if you're passing carbon dioxide gas because it's a loud, airy, and you'll know if you're passing methane because it's the silent deadly.
SPDs.
That's how you know.
Well, this brings up some curiosity for me, Molly, and I'm curious what you think about this. So, I've always been under the impression, and just, from the physiology that I've learned and the anatomy and such, that there actually should not be very much bacteria in the small intestine whatsoever. Like there shouldn't be that much in there.
Right. They used to think it was sterile.
Yeah.
And then after some, number of years of testing people's small intestines, they found that most people have some bacteria in there.
Right.
But exactly right. So, like, if we were to do a functional stool test, this is kind of off topic, but it can kind of tell you what the cause of your bloating is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is there methane producers or there carbon dioxide producers in there? Is it more hydrogen producers?
Yeah.
And also, what strains of bacteria are in the small intestine and how many?
Mm-hmm.
Same with yeast. What strains and how many? Now, is that a diagnostic tool? No. Is it something that like they do validation tests and third party tests, but with any private lab, they're setting their own recommendation. So that's why you may have heard your doctor say, oh, none of the stool tests are effective. Well, in my opinion, I do think it's helpful if you're working with someone who's going to be eradicating some of that extra bacteria, to know what strains are in there. And a stool test can also say, oh, we're not seeing a lot of bacteria in your small intestine, but your pancreas isn't producing elastase to break down fats
Mm-hmm.
really at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we need to support. And I think that it's good to give someone support for what's actually wrong. versus, just saying, oh, it's probably overgrowth bacteria in your small intestine, also known as SIBO
Right.
or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah. And that's just a whole, I feel like that kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, that bloating can be part of more of a complex picture happening. Whereas I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of the times, things like SIBO are just a symptom picture of more of something deeper that's going on inside.
Well, and something will have caused that to be able to take up residence there,
Mm-hmm.
and something will trigger it to bother you because not everyone has IBS type symptoms of abdominal pain or bloating or
Right.
gas or dissatisfaction, with bowel movements. So it's more like, okay, well, why is this bothering you,
Yeah,
and what can we do about it?
totally. And I think we kind of started this talking a little bit about like what foods kind of bring on a little bit of gas, like obviously the gas forming foods like beans and that sort of thing, the stuff. I notice a big one with people is actually sugar. That sugar can be
Hmm.
very gaseous, and it's more of the SBD style, like the silent but deadly ones.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
where it's
And
almost like a
lactose.
toxic, like in Chinese medicine, it creates toxic heat, and it's coming out as
Mm.
toxic heat as a toot, a stinky fart.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think also, remembering that the low FODMAP diet basically prevents it removes all fibers that cause this fermentation to happen.
Right.
So if you want to know what causes it, you can look at everything the low FODMAP diet tells you to avoid. So that would be like all the stuff that's really good for you.
Hmm.
Artichokes and you know, uh beans, like you're saying, all kinds of whole grains, plenty of broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprout type thing.
Hmm.
Now, it's one thing to eliminate these foods, but then we want to bring back as many as we can so that we can support our body to make hormones and
Hmm.
to detoxify the liver and to support, or let the liver detoxify itself, but and to support all these processes, including appropriate formation and bulk of your bowel movement so that it's not
Hmm.
too watery or too hard.
Yeah.
um, and all of that, like we can't be starving our gut of these kind of natural homeostasis, like circle, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Thinking about the supporting, um, systems that go along with it. Like, I was kind of thinking of things that are a little more complex that bloating kind of comes from, like even something as simple as acid reflux or GERD,
Hmm.
or, you're not able to, the very first step of digestion where you're thinking about food and creating salivary enzymes and, starting to get that vagus nerve stimulation down into the gut that's really getting all of those digestive enzymes churning and rocking and ready to go to receive the food and nourish you. Like if that first step is a mess, oftentimes that can lead to just simple bloating.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh my gosh. I mean, if you're chewing your food really quickly, you're swallowing a lot of air. Let's say you didn't eat lunch,
Yeah.
and then you're huffing down your dinner. Swallowing air is going to create a lot of air that has to come out,
Yeah.
which causes bloating. Bigger pieces of food
Mm-hmm.
that don't get broken down appropriately, that
Mm-hmm.
can disrupt the whole process.
Yeah. And just kind of going back to that hormonal piece, sometimes, when our hormones naturally fluctuate, which it's normal to have a little bit of bloating at that time. But sometimes when there's something underlying, let's say endometriosis or various cysts or fibroids in certain locations, maybe some PCOS, something along those lines, those can often really exacerbate just the normal bloating that comes along with it, which can also just be a sign that like this bloating is pretty out of control, and maybe you're having some
Hmm.
other symptoms coming along with your cycle that don't necessarily add up to being kind of like this is what we experience at this time of the month. Like there's things that are normal, but there's a lot of things that aren't normal that we have deemed normal, and that is certainly not one of them. Like if your bloating is really bad around that time, that's a way to, your body's telling you we need to look under the hood a little bit deeper.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and you never want to settle, right? Like if you really can't tolerate healthy foods, like plant fibers and that sort of thing, you want to get that figured out so that you can, you
Hmm.
know, have a healthy diet, support your brain and everything else. But then also you don't want to be miserable every time you have to make a decision about eating.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I think that kind of ties into the last little piece I wanted to talk about with, kind of the causes and things to think about with bloating is that, anxiety and a high stress life and, the inability to be really tolerant of stress or regulate your nervous system in a way that's beneficial for the body, like that can lead to an inability to digest, which some of the first signs for people with that is just bloating. Like my body isn't ready to receive food. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm bloating up because those processes weren't ready to go. And now I'm sitting here creating all this gas or inability to digest just in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Oh,
kind of more of
absolutely.
a abdominal distension. I think that falls more into that category as opposed to gas, actually, because I feel like that does have a little bit to do with more of the muscles. Like if you are in a really anxious state, your muscles in your stomach feel so tight and so full. And, if that's more chronic, that can be really hard to, relieve that distension.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that gut brain axis, right? I guess if there's a dysfunction there, that's a little more tricky too. That can lead to bloating even.
So, what do you do if you're bloated? Well, what does Chinese medicine tell you to do?
Oh man, a big one is relax. I know it sounds kind of weird,
Mm-hmm.
but relax or walk, right? Like get things moving if you can. If
Mm-hmm.
you're not in so much pain that it feels good to go out for a walk, go ahead. Otherwise, you can rest. They'll lay on your left side and fart. It's like one of my favorite things. Heat is always really nice to relax the muscles, relax the digestion, like get things kind of slowly moving in the right direction. Always like, uh, this is kind of aligned with TCM, but more of like an Ayurvedic Eastern in general, which is doing those poses that relieve wind, like a yoga, like a puppy pose or wind relieving pose or happy baby or legs up the wall. Like those things tend to be really helpful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that are just kind of free at home, give them a try. But usually what we do is there's a really, really common herbal formula that we use called curing pills, and
Hmm.
it's one of those proprietary blends from China. There's like two from there that sell really good, or that are like their top, exported and selling patents there. One of them's for colds and flus, and one of them is for stomach aches. And this curing pills is for stomach aches in particular. And it has a really nice blend of herbs that are, it has the ginger, it has the mint, it has puoria, which is kind of breaks down a little bit of dampness. Dampness is kind of what you could think of as like when the fluids become stagnant. Like we want them to move around,
Mm-hmm.
so it encourages that movement. We have Yi Yi Ren, which is Job's tears or like koiks,
Mm-hmm.
little seeds. Those things are really good. Kind of like act as a little bit of like a fermented sort of thing. There's a little bit of blood nourishing in there, some dangui, a little bit of herbs that help to kind of kill off a little bit of bacteria, but gently, like a ginger would. And they all that just that combination of hitting it from all the different angles is really helpful. Like within minutes, you're feeling better. And they also say, like, when you travel, take some curing pills with meals that you may or may not suspect that maybe they didn't use clean water if you're in a third world country, or you're like, oh, this is a not necessarily like I'm eating gluten and it's going to take away your effect of gluten, but it definitely helps with relieving the distension you feel from foods that might be hard for you to digest, or maybe you're feeling anxious, you're eating too fast or something. So the curing pills those are awesome. I love those. That's kind of what we lean on,
Mm-hmm.
or just a custom herbal formula if that happens to be chronic for you. We would do that more for what the underlying cause might be to avoid the bloating to begin with. What about
Mm-hmm.
you, dear? What
Mm-hmm.
are your favorite things when you're actually bloated?
So, for me, bloating is all about relaxing the intestines
Mm-hmm.
and allowing that gas to pass more easily. And so, what do we use for smooth muscle relaxants? So, one thing we can use are just regular old fennel seeds. You can chew them, or there is actually a company that I will link. Let's see, link the fennel. They make like these tasty fennel seeds,
Mm,
but you can just chew regular old fennel seeds,
yeah.
and that will really help to relax the intestines and help. gas to come out. Digestive bitters, like even an Angostura, a couple dashes and some soda water
Oh yeah.
can introduce some kind of herbs and components to break down some of those gases and allow them to pass through.
Mm-hmm.
We've got magnesium, of course. Magnesium citrate being more of like a stool softener that helps to introduce water into the colon.
Mm-hmm.
But magnesium, any form, is going to be relaxing to the intestines. Same with peppermint oil and ginger. So I like boiling ginger root in
Mm-hmm.
water
Yeah.
and making a ginger tea
Yeah.
and kind of storing it for later. So making a big batch and then keeping it in the fridge.
Yeah.
But ginger oil triggers the vagus nerve to start that peristalsis motion, kind of
Mm-hmm.
get your intestines moving. And that can help to kind of push the gas out and
Mm-hmm.
also to relax the intestines as well.
Yeah, and a lot of time that acrid and spicy nature of an herb will do that as well. Like ginger is like it
Yes.
doesn't, ginger in our medicine is it's an herb that warms the interior and like expels the cold, but it can really help to like what do we call this? Like it like warms the channels in the abdominal area so that things can get moving, and then it's slightly antibacterial and whatnot. But being one of those like kind of acrid and hot and warm, um, it's gonna move. It's gonna create a lot of movement because a lot of the time I feel like that bloating is literally just stagnant. Everything's just stagnant and it
Mm-hmm.
needs to move around. So even things like ginger, which can be kind of a little, ginger's a little hot, but that can be helpful. Cardamom can be also pretty helpful. Honestly, the
Mm.
best tea from Lala's Wellness is one of my favorite things that I drink when I'm feeling bloated, because it's more of like a whole body tonic, and so it kind of again is like a version of a curing pill. Like it hits there's a little bit of liver in there. There's a little like with dandelion. There's some marshmallow. There's some cinnamon, which is great to kind of help. It again is like acrid and can release the exterior
Mm-hmm.
and really help move things
Mm.
through in like a light diaphoretic way. So you might get like a gentle sweat, which can also kind of like encourage the rest of the organs to kind of come on and facilitate that bloating a little, relieving a little easier. And then what else
Mm-hmm.
is in there? A little bit of
You know what's interesting?
ginger, or sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, ginger and gentle ginseng and some reishi.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's so good. And it is made like a decoction, like you just said, cooking the ginger for a long time. With roots and stuff, you definitely want to do that. You want to cook it for a minimum of 10 minutes, like a slow, low boil, in order to get all the healing properties out of it. You can do like a gentle ginger tea if it's like, more of like a powder form. You can just turn it into like a infusion, but mostly you want to really decoct it to where it's
Mm-hmm.
cooked for a long time. Then you get the good stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Like maybe make it in a crock pot.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great.
Mm. I have to try this best tea. I have not tried it yet.
Oh, it's so good. My favorite thing these days has been taking the best tea and then a lot of the mandarin peels, and I just put like a scoop or two of the best tea in a small pot on the stove, and then as I'm eating the mandarins, because they're so good at this time of the year, like I love citrus at this time of the year, and the peels
Mm-hmm.
are so good not only to help with digestion, we actually use them for bloating as well, like a bitter orange peel. It's called chen pea.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to cook them along with the best tea also at this time of the year for an immune boost, because the vitamin C in the bitter peels is really high, as well as the antioxidants like in the white part of the pith of the peel is so good, and it's delicious. Like it's a great addition to the best tea. It makes it so yummy.
Mm.
Yum yum.
um, Bitter foods as well. So when we think about endive and radicchio and arugula and dandelion greens and broccoli rabe, all those kind of bitter greens, mustard
Yes.
greens, those can be really supportive. And then if you're eating foods and every time you eat you feel like more bloated, then you can look into a digestive enzyme.
Mm-hmm.
Digestive enzymes specifically that have alpha galactidase, which is going to break down a lot of those fibers, amylase, lipase for fat. If you're lactose intolerant, obviously, I really like milky. It's like a more powerful lactate, so that's been my favorite lactose one.
Nice.
But yeah, because it's like, okay, well, can we actually stop this before we need to relax the intestines by just
Mhm.
supporting digestion enough so that
Mhm.
the gas doesn't form?
Yeah. I feel like sometimes people too will try like papaya enzymes or
Mm-hmm.
bromelain
Yep.
or something like that. And I feel like that's a slippery slope. I think sometimes that can make it a little bit worse. But they can be really helpful if it's the actual digestion you need help with. Like that'll
Mm-hmm.
really help
Yeah.
stir that up a little bit. And it's hard to tell too. I think that's one of the things with bloating in general that's like your body's telling you something. Are you paying attention? If you've been dealing with some consistent bloating, are you taking a little note of what you had in the meal before to kind of be able to reflect and find some trends and patterns? Or
Mm-hmm.
recognizing like, am I just really not stopping before I eat, and like finding just a little sense of calm, maybe taking a few deep breaths. And you'll see sometimes
Sitting
people
down.
sit down, bless your food a little bit, take some deep breaths, have a nice conversation with someone that you love, or people in your family and community, and really make that receiving the food a much more calm situation. I think a lot of the time that's actually a lot of where bloating comes from, is we just don't sit down and enjoy our food enough.
Well, let that be a lesson to everyone today to enjoy your food and have a nice seat. Definitely pick yourself up some best tea because
Mm-hmm.
it sounds delicious, and I will be doing that momentarily. And
Yes, it's so good.
I hope I hope everyone has a great week. We will be back next week.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We offer personalized support to clients in many ways and would love to work with you. Reach out to Lara at Lala's Wellness and Molly at Women's Gut Health for more information. Unlock your full health and hormone potential with Super Q, Boom Bomb, and Best Tea. Check out the link in the show notes for more. See you next Saturday.